On the broadcast this Tuesday night, no breakthrough deal struck in today's Seoul-Tokyo talks aimed at resolving Japan's wartime sex slavery issue. This dimming the prospects for a resolution to the matter before the year's end. A 120-day-long campaign kicks off as candidates begin registering for April's general election. This as rival political parties failed to finalize redrawn electoral districts today. And the Seoul High Court sentences the chairman of Korea's 14th biggest conglomerate, CJ Group, to 2.5 years in prison, upholding a lower court's decision. News Center begins right now. Good evening to our viewers in Korea and hello to those around the world. Welcome to News Center. Seoul and Tokyo have once again failed to reach an agreement on the unresolved issue of Japan's sexual enslavement of women across Asia before and during World War II. A disappointing outcome as it was likely the last such meeting this year, and time is running out for the surviving victims who are now in their 80s and 90s. We are joined by Arirang's Foreign Affairs correspondent Kwon So-ah. Now, So-ah, we had high hopes going into today's working level talks between Seoul and Tokyo.
Konyang, it was already the 11th round of talks meant to get South Korea and Japan on the same page toward resolving the issue of Japan's sexual enslavement of Korean women during World War II. But at Tuesday's meeting in Tokyo, the two sides failed once again to find common ground. Seoul's Foreign Ministry's Northeast Asian Bureau Chief Lee Sang-duk, Korea's representative to the talks, told reporters after the meeting with his Japanese counterpart Kimihiro Ishikane that at this stage it was difficult to say that the talks were productive, but also hard to say they were not.
Seoul wants to see an early conclusion of the negotiations, but whether another round can be held this year has to be analyzed once the delegation returns to Korea.
While Seoul has been pushing for a formal apology and compensation from Japan for the sexual enslavement of Korean women, Japan wants to approach the issue on a purely humanitarian level. Tokyo claims that the issue was settled under a 1965 bilateral treaty that normalized relations between the two countries. Despite the fact there's been no major progress on the matter since the first talks were held in April last year, expectations for Tuesday's meeting were higher than usual. That's because the meeting came just 2 weeks before the end of the year and after President Park Geun-hye had called for a greater momentum toward a resolution by the end of this year during her first summit with Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe in November. Now, even if Japan does apologize, only 46 of the 238 Korean victims registered as so-called comfort women are still alive today to hear that apology after one of them died earlier this month. Konyang?
Right, which is why it's all the more tragic that prospects for the resolution of this matter by the year's end have further dimmed after today's talks. Thank you, So-ah. That was our Kwon So-ah from the Foreign Affairs Ministry. Well, it's campaign time for the nation's general election set for April next year. Those who wish to run for the race began registering today. Yet, Korea's rival political parties are still locked in horns over the nation's electoral map. Arirang News parliamentary correspondent Ji Myung-gil joins me from the National Assembly. Myung-gil, with no agreement in sight, it looks like the talks could drag on until the end of the year even.
Good evening, Kanyang. Korea's two main rival parties wrapped up another round of talks on readjusting the nation's electoral map without a solution. The ruling Saenuri Party slammed the main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy for the failure.
If the NPAD doesn't want to be remembered as the worst political party ever, they'd better work towards progress on the redistricting issue. The issue must be resolved to make it easier for newcomers planning to run in the general elections next year.
There is concern that those who participated in early candidate registration on Tuesday could be at a disadvantage in launching their campaigns. If they register their candidacies in areas subject to redistricting, their campaigns could be invalidated when the electoral map changes. Earlier in the day, National Assembly Speaker Chung Ih-wa had called a meeting of rival party leaders in an effort to move them forward a compromise. Calling the matter a legislative emergency, he indicated he would step in if the parties failed to find a solution by the end of the year. The MPAD objected immediately, saying he had overreached.
It wouldn't be right for Speaker Chung to exercise his authority to resolve the restricting issue. That goes against the principle of parliamentary sovereignty.
The redistricting issue arose following a ruling by the Constitutional Court last year that said the current electoral map is unconstitutional because it perpetuates unequal representation due to changes in the population. The main sticking point between the rival parties is whether or not to decrease the number of proportional representatives. The only thing they've agreed on so far is to keep the number of assembly seats at the current 300. Earlier today, their senior presidential secretary for political affairs was spotted at the National Assembly in a possible reflection of how much the presidential office wants to see urgent livelihood bills passed, as the redistricting issue has overshadowed parliamentary business. Kon-young?
Well, a lot of parliamentary business that needs to be taken care of, and soon enough. Of course, the Speaker said he'll hold a press conference at 11 a.m. tomorrow, Wednesday that is, so we should wait and see what he has to say then. Thank you, Myung-gil. That was our Chi Myung-gil from the National Assembly. Well, meanwhile, former main opposition party leader Ahn Cheol-soo, who just a few days ago quit the NPAD, is making his way around Korea to drum up support for his plans to start his own party. Pundits predict at least 10 lawmakers will defect from the New Politics Alliance for Democracy party and join him. Ahn says he's also looking for new faces with a passion for reform. Our Lee Soo-eun has the latest on the politician's bold attempt to go it alone.
Former opposition leader Ahn Cheol-soo has already taken his political comeback tour on the road, following his departure from the main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy party. On Tuesday, Ahn traveled to Korea's southern port city of Busan, where he told local reporters he's seeking to build a new party of talented individuals, even if they lean conservative, as long as they're interested in his reform agenda and fulfill 3 criteria: be against corruption, self-contradiction, and extreme conservatism. Last Sunday, Ahn quit the party he co-founded after his efforts to reform the party and get the current leader Moon Jae-in to resign failed to gain momentum. While it's unclear what effect his departure will have on the political landscape, new polling suggests that it could spell trouble for the opposition, which suffered crushing defeats in the last 2 by-elections. In a nationwide poll by local polling agency Realmeter regarding Ahn's departure from the NPAD, almost half of the respondents said they approved of his decision. However, in the southern provinces of Jeollabuk-do and Jeollanam-do, considered a hotbed of support for the liberal camp, the positive response fell short of 35%. Analysts say that the result illustrates a regional concern over a potential splitting of the liberal vote that could lead to defeat in next year's general elections in April. Lee Soo-eun, Arirang News.
The law should be applied equally to all people, with no business tycoon becoming an exception. Those were the words from the judge in handing down a 2.5-year prison term and a $21 million fine to Lee Jae-hyun, chairman of Korea's 14th largest conglomerate by asset size, CJ Group. Now, the sentence is seen as an effort by the judiciary to break away from the long practice of being extra lenient on business tycoons, citing their contribution to the national economy. Song Ji-sun reports.
CJ Group chairman Lee Jae-hyun has been sentenced to 2.5 years in prison and handed a fine of $21 million for embezzlement, tax evasion, and breach of trust. The food and entertainment tycoon was sentenced to 4 years in jail in 2013 for misappropriating $140 million in company assets to offshore slush funds and dodging taxes in the process. The following year, an appeals court cut the jail term to 3 years. And then this year, the Supreme Court returned the case to the local court and asked it to reconsider the heavy sentence. When Yi was indicted, the judge said in his ruling that Yi had committed the crimes to increase his personal assets and that even conglomerate owners must be punished for their misdeeds. Conglomerate owners in Korea have often been excused to manage their businesses and thus contribute to the economy, with judges giving them light punishment such as probation instead of prison time. Former SK Group chairman Choi Tae-won is the only Deper owner to be imprisoned before he was pardoned by President Park Geun-hye this year, with another year and a half to go on his 4-year sentence. Yi has been hospitalized for the past 2 years after undergoing a kidney transplant, so he has yet to serve any jail time. CJ Group is reportedly seeking a successor for the chairman, as it appears he will not be returned to work anytime soon. The group's revenue inched up just 4% last year to $23 billion, falling from its annual double-digit growth prior to Yi's absence. 송지선, Arirang News.
There is still no clear explanation to why North Korea canceled a concert in Beijing by its Moranbong band just hours before the group was scheduled to take the stage. Well, amid growing speculations, a new report suggests that it may be because China asked for changes to the band's repertoire. Connie Kim has this report.
China and North Korea's inability to compromise may have led to the cancellation of a Beijing concert by North Korea's Moranbong band. Citing a source in Beijing, Radio Free Asia reported Tuesday, Chinese officials asked that some songs be removed from the repertoire, saying art and propaganda do not go together. The band's director Hyun Sung-won refused, saying the songs had been chosen by North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. To make things worse, a Chinese member of the lighting crew pointed out Kim was referred to the International Criminal Court for human rights abuses and said Pyongyang must learn from Beijing. That's when Hyun ordered the band members to pack their bags to return to Pyongyang. The report has been echoed by experts in Seoul.
North Korea's long-range missile launch is celebrated in the Moranbong band's repertoire. Since it would be unimaginable for China to applaud such a thing, Chinese officials probably asked for the song to be dropped, and it's likely North Korea did not back down.
That's not the only theory floating around. Korea's spy agency said Tuesday that the cancellation may have come after Beijing decided to send lower-ranking officials. Korea's spy agency said Tuesday that the cancellation may have come after Beijing decided to send lower-ranking officials to the event after seeing that the show would contain propaganda praising the North Korean leader. Observers in Seoul also say North Korea's announcement that it has a hydrogen bomb and its declaration of a mourning period for its late leader Kim Jong-il may have been factors as well. While Beijing and Pyongyang remain tight-lipped on why North Korea canceled the concert, Seoul's foreign ministry says it's also keeping a close eye on the situation. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
China's currency, the yuan, recently hit a 4.5-year low against the U.S. dollar. And the currency may continue its weakening trend against the dollar because China's monetary policies are loosening, while those in the U.S. are finally starting to tighten, possibly beginning with interest rate rises this week. How would all this play out for the Korean economy? Will it hurt Korean exporters? Our Kim Min-ji explains.
Will the Chinese yuan depreciate further down the road? According to a Bloomberg survey of 64 foreign investment banks, the yuan is expected to trade at an average of 6.61 against the US dollar at the end of next year. That means on year, the Chinese currency is forecast to lose 2.3% of its value. On Tuesday, the yuan weakened against the dollar after the central bank set its official midpoint at its lowest level in more than 4 years. China also announced it intends to depeg the currency from the US dollar and instead link it to a basket of 13 currencies, including the dollar, euro, and yen, which would give it room to fall further. The move is widely seen as an attempt to manage the yuan's value against the greenback ahead of a widely expected U.S. rate hike this week, as a stronger dollar would in turn raise the value of the yuan. But some analysts warn that a further decline in the yuan's value could hurt countries that compete with China on the trade front, such as Korea, and could risk a currency war.
If the yuan weakens further, Korea's exports to China will slow, and it'll also hurt the price competitiveness of exporters that compete with China. It could also push other countries to devalue their currencies.
Analysts add that while China will likely maintain its loose monetary policy, it's not likely to intervene in devaluing its currency any further. So while the yuan is expected to continue its downward slide for some time, there won't be any drastic drops in the foreseeable future. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
The European Union and members of the European Parliament are expected to agree a new data protection law governing the uses of personal data. Now, it would replace a patchwork of 28 different laws and give regulators greater enforcement powers. Companies would have to report privacy breaches to authorities or face stiff sanctions. The details of this sweeping reform, our Kwon Jang-ho reports.
After 4 years of deliberations and negotiations, the European Union is finally looking to update its current data privacy law that has been in place since the 90s. The reformed law will require internet companies to not only give users greater information on how personal data will be used, but also get their consent to use it. The age of consent will be raised from 13 to 16, with younger users needing parental permission to share personal information. The law also aims to deter companies from hiding cyber attacks. Data breaches will need to be alerted to national authorities within 72 hours. Failure to disclose the information could cost the infringing company a fine of around 4% of its global revenue. For internet giants like Google and Facebook, that could mean billions of dollars. But there is an upside. Currently, all 28 EU members have their own individual data protection laws. The new reform plans to bring them all together under one regulator or a one-stop shop, instead of dealing with every EU national authority individually.
Fines and sanctions will become stricter, putting internet companies under greater pressure. But when dealing with the EU bloc as a whole, it should be simpler and clearer.
Still, experts warn that care needs to be taken.
When collecting and using information from people in the EU, Korean companies will have to be stringent on whether it complies with the new regulations. Consultation with law experts will likely be necessary.
Once the regulation is signed off, internet companies will have 2 years to come into compliance. Kwon Jang-ho, Arirang News.
'Tis the time to be jolly. Yes, it is December, it's the end of the year, and it's time for those holiday parties and year-end gatherings, which means for those of us 19 years and above, well, it would vary by countries, but at least here in Korea, that is the case. It's highly likely that there will be a bit of drinking involved. Now, emphasis on a bit of drinking, that is, because a new research shows even small amounts of alcohol can pose a significant health threat for a sizable proportion of the Asian population. Yes, really. Our Son Jung-in has more on what may set off alarm bells for many of us.
According to Kang Bo-seung, professor of emergency medicine at Hanyang University Guri Hospital, roughly 40% of people of East Asian descent, including people from Korea, China, and Japan, experience flushed cheeks, nausea, or drowsiness after drinking alcohol. That's because many Asians have an inactive variant of the enzyme that is normally responsible for breaking down alcohol. People with the enzyme deficiency who drink put themselves at risk for a heart attack or a blood clot in the brain, so they should avoid alcohol completely. Kang's report was published in the U.S. Journal of Neurology, and it was issued to refute an earlier study by local researchers. Last month, a team of neurologists at Seoul National University Hospital in Bundang released a report that said drinking 3 to 4 shots of soju reduced the risk of stroke for men by around 50%.
Kang claimed that the study overlooked the genetic difference between Westerners and East Asians in the body's ability to break down alcohol. 손정인, Arirang News.
Last year, a 29-year-old American was diagnosed with terminal brain cancer in California. Rather than let the illness take its dreadful course, Brittany Maynard moved to Oregon, where a death with dignity law exempts doctors from prosecution with some safeguards if they prescribe life-ending drugs to terminally ill patients who ask for them. Now, Oregon is one of 5 states in the U.S. where that practice is legal. Death with dignity has been debated for years, not only in the U.S., but all across the world, and Korea, of course, is no exception. 6 years after the nation's Supreme Court ruled in favor of a death with dignity case for comatose women, this country has moved a step closer to expanding laws on that front. Do we have the right to die with dignity? Our news feature tonight with Oh Soo-young.
December 8th marked a major milestone in expanding the right to die with dignity. The National Assembly's Health and Welfare Committee passed a bill for passive euthanasia, which has been dubbed Well Dying Bill. And it's now headed for a vote at an upcoming plenary session.
Until now, terminally ill patients with no chances of recovery were automatically placed under life support measures through CPR or ventilators. Otherwise, doctors and hospitals could be charged for assisted murder. But if the well dying law passes through, patients can forego life-sustaining treatment with the Advanced Medical Directive form or the physician's orders for life-sustaining treatment.
In Korea, a nationwide debate on the well dying law sparked 6 years ago when the first case of passive euthanasia was approved for an elderly woman surnamed Kim, allowing doctors to discontinue her life-sustaining treatment.
In the past, withholding treatments was down to family members rather than the patient's wishes. Then, the case of the late Kim became a hot topic of debate on how a patient's personal wishes should be a priority.
Now, after numerous discussions over the years, the National Bioethics Committee has proposed that the Health Ministry create a legal framework on life-sustaining treatments. And the recent passing of the well dying law, the topic of death with dignity has taken an unprecedented turn.
There were some voices of discontent, but the majority sees the law in a positive light. This is because the recent law on life-sustaining treatments is more comprehensive.
Most Koreans appear to be in favor of the well dying law. A recent survey shows that 90% of patients would halt their life-extending treatments if their conditions were fatal beyond recovery. Meanwhile, 63% of patients' family members said they would also halt treatments. With heightening interest in the well dying law and passive euthanasia, more Koreans are filling out an Advanced Medical Directive form, which formalizes a person's wish on how they would like their life to end if they were to fall terminally ill.
We're getting more and more phone calls from people who read about the well dying law in the papers. We already got about 20 calls this morning, and many decide to sign the form after witnessing a close relative or friend undergo life-extending treatment.
While Korea is taking baby steps in pushing forward the well dying law, many countries in the world permit euthanasia under varying standards. The Netherlands was the first country in the world to legalize euthanasia and even allow assisted suicide, which is mostly prohibited by other nations. In the US, 4 states allow assisted suicide restricted to certain conditions, while 41 states only accept Advanced Medical Directive forms. If the Korean Parliament passes the bill, it will come into effect starting 2018. But until then, experts say that various safeguards and improvements are needed.
An additional verification process is needed for those without next of kin. Right now, there are concerns that the law could be subject to manipulation. Such areas need improvement.
Also, medical experts say that more hospices are needed to facilitate those who refuse life-extending treatments and choose pain management instead. The number of hospices in Korea has been on the rise each year, as well as the number of patients. However, these facilities only make up 0.19% of medical centers in Korea.
There are currently about 1,000 in Korea. That's an inadequate number compared to most developed countries. If the law is enforced, there will be a severe shortage when it comes to accommodating the growing number of patients. That's why the government needs to invest in more facilities.
The bill for death with dignity is being debated across the nation, and many wonder what kind of impact it will have on the Korean society.
The cultural emphasis on filial duty makes the discussion of their parents' deaths seem like a form of disrespect. But as this law takes course, families will naturally begin to discuss the topic more openly.
Once the well-dying law comes into effect, it will provide terminally ill patients with the choice to end their lives naturally, without artificial life-extending treatments. The law also brings forward a chance for retrospection and a more open discussion on the inevitable topic of death. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
Billionaire Donald Trump has extended his lead ahead of the final Republican presidential debate of the year. This despite recently calling for a ban on all Muslim immigrants to the U.S., which of course triggered a lot of opposition from not only that country, but all around the world as well. Bruce Harrison joins me live in the studio. Bruce, it's hard to believe, but Trump's extreme comments once again seem to be helping him with his popularity ratings and stuff.
We've seen this throughout the campaign, Kon-young. It seems to work the same way it has all along. His far-right talk really just appeals to conservative voters, especially now amid talks of locking down U.S. borders and terrorist attacks at home and around the world. He's gained a lot of support because of that.
Well, do Trump's challengers have any chance of gaining ground at Tuesday's debate, which is set to happen in a few hours, right?
Yeah, in Las Vegas, there's always room to move up. There's potential to edge up, and they're going to be debating the economy. Also, despite Trump's position in national polls, Ted Cruz, Republican senator, is leading in Iowa, which is where the first Republican nominating contest is going to be held in just 7 weeks. Trump's criticized a lot of people and groups throughout his campaign, and it's unclear if he'll keep that up during the debate, when it may just be safer to keep a low profile and cement his lead. So far this week in Las Vegas, though, he hasn't been doing that.
You have the radical Islamic extremists. They're pouring in, they're coming in. We have a lot of them here. We have to be careful.
Trump added he has many great relationships with Muslims who are also aware of the problem of radical Islamists. The top diplomats of the U.S. and Russia met in Moscow for talks on the crisis in Syria. U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry and his counterpart Sergei Lavrov discussed Tuesday how to end conflicts in Syria and Ukraine. Russia and the U.S. have been unable to agree on the role of Syrian President Bashar Assad as both nations challenge Islamic State militants in the region. Kerry said the U.S. and Russia don't agree that ISIS must be stopped.
These are the worst of terrorists. They attack culture and history and all decency, and they leave no choice but for civilized nations to stand together and to fight and push back and destroy them.
The talks were expected to delve deeper into plans for ceasefire on the first of the year. Both the U.S. and Russia are conducting airstrikes right now in the Middle East.
Well, Bruce, the U.S. and Russia may not agree on the Middle East, but they are working together on the final frontier, space. I mean, you and I just saw just hours ago the Soyuz rocket, blast off successfully with American, Russian, and British crew on board. What is their mission all about?
That crew's heading to the International Space Station. They're going to join up with 3 other crew members who've been on board for about 6 months, and they're going to work together on several hundred experiments in biology, biotechnology, and physical science. Tim Peake is on board the Soyuz. He's going to be the first British astronaut to work aboard the International Space Station, even though it means missing the holidays.
But of course, we'll be enjoying the fantastic view of planet Earth, and our thoughts will be with everybody on Earth enjoying Christmas and with our friends and family.
Peake says he'll give his family a call on Christmas Day.
Well, Bruce, the crew they're joining has been conducting experiments on the effects of long space travel, which, data that could be used for NASA's journey to Mars, right?
That's right. NASA has plans right now to hopefully put humans on an asteroid by 2025 and then maybe sometime in the 2030s to actually land a human mission on Mars. So that's what the data collection is important. They have to find out what's going to keep astronauts safe in space once they finally do have the technology to put them there.
So we might see the film Martian really come to real life.
That could be a stretch to say at this point, but anything's possible. And we'll just have to see how successful this current mission to the space station is and how the astronauts do.
Right, and we wish happy holidays to the astronauts in space.
I'm sure we'll see some footage from the space station.
All right, thank you, Bruce, for that.
My pleasure.
Well, it was another surprisingly warm Tuesday in the third week of December, but it seems like we're not the only country going through these unusual, I dare say, mild winter. For more, let's go over to our Jihan. Jihan, so New York, Tokyo, they're also said to be under these higher temperatures than the seasonal average.
Hello, Ganyang. Yes, you're right. In fact, Central Park in New York saw a high going up to 19 degrees Celsius last Saturday, which was the highest temperature for this time of the year since meteorological records started. And besides, last Friday, Tokyo in Japan reached 24 degrees. And even European countries are also expected to have an abnormal winter this year, and that's all due to El Nino phenomenon. And as for here in Seoul, we better start bundle up again as freezing temperatures are ahead of us. The mercury will plunge to the negatives tomorrow morning, and the high will only reach up to 1, and that's about 7 degrees lower than today, so you might want to really bundle up before heading out tomorrow. And strong gusty winds will blow in and adding a chill to the air, so it's going to bring down the sensory temperatures. But at least it's not going to snow in the capital area, whereas many parts of the country will be blanketed by snowfalls between 1 to 8 centimeters, and mountainous regions in Jeju-do will see up to 20 centimeters. So if you're in these regions, be sure to have snowproof accessories before heading out tomorrow. On that note, let's move on to tomorrow's temperatures, checking on the lows first. So here in the capital, we'll kick off at -3, 1 for Daejeon, and Daegu will start out the day at 2, and Gwangju as well, and Busan and Jeju will start out their days at 4 and 6 respectively. And it's going to remain cold throughout the day tomorrow, high only rising to 1, 3 for Daejeon, 5 in Daegu, and Busan and Jeju will only see a high of 9 and 7 tomorrow afternoon. And it will just keep getting colder by the day, with the thermometer expected to reach -6 by Friday morning. So you might want to prepare for a real cold weather to come. Well, that's Korea for you, and here's a look at the weather conditions around the world.
And that huge Christmas tree is another reminder that yes, it is the holiday season, and yes, 'tis the season to be merry and jolly, but also again a reminder that it's a time for us to remember those who are underprivileged and less fortunate than we are. That is our broadcast on this Tuesday night. I'm Moon Gan-young. Thanks everyone for watching, and we hope to see you right back here, same time tomorrow on NewsCenter.